Hello everybody. Today we're gonna be talking about a deck tech. Colin K asked in my last video if I would do a deck tech for my Toxrill the Corrosive deck. So Toxrill is really good against aggro and mid-range decks. This deck struggles a lot against control decks. It's just a lot of the cards in it are unfortunately dead against control. Like the things that destroy planeswalkers necessarily aren't dead. But cards like a lot of your removal is dead because a lot of the control decks don't play creatures on creatures on creatures, so you just draw dead against a lot of the stuff they can do. There is a lot of counter magic in this deck, but if you don't draw just counter magic in like your creatures, you'll probably lose. And then unfortunately, a lot of your creatures are also removal spells, so you might get to use like 3 or 4 removal spells a game because control decks creatures are so big in comparison to like aggro and mid range, which has a little bit of everything. Um, but yeah, against aggro and mid range decks, it's phenomenal. So let's just go over what Toxrill does. At the beginning of each end step, put a slime counter on each creature you don't control. Creatures you don't control get -1/-1 for each slime counter on them. Whenever a creature you don't control with a slime counter on it dies, create a 1/1 black slug creature token. Blue-black, sacrifice a slug, draw a card. He's really good for just creating an environment where your opponent can't keep a board state because he just makes so many slugs. You chump block all their bigger guys as they slowly die, and you make more and more slugs. But this deck is really slow, so you have to get the 7 mana, which is kind of challenging sometimes. But to get there, we have Otherworldly Gaze. This helps sets up your draws. It really helps you find land. Finding land in this deck is very important. Siren Storm Tamer, counter spell for your guys or you. Pretty helpful in my opinion. This is nice because it's great early game removal, and if you can kicker it, use great late game removal as well. Divest, Dread Fusion, Duress are all for the same thing. Information is very important when you're playing this deck because knowing if your opponent doesn't have a removal spell or not is great because instead of waiting to like have counter magic and mana for your spell, you can just straight up play. And you can usually take some key cards early in the game with these. Shambling Ghast is ramp. I pretty much always use treasure. It's literally a chump blocker to ramp. Anticipate is great because you need a lot of cards that also are instant speed instead of counter spells because for some people they play scared and they won't play into your counter magic, so you can anticipate instead at the end of their turn. This is a great card because it goes well with his -1/-1 counters. You proliferate, you kill a whole bunch of guys, make a whole bunch of slugs, draw a card. Disdainful Stroke, best counterspell in Historic. Essence Scatter, self-explanatory. Negate, self-explanatory. Search for Azcanta, this is another thing where it's meant to find lands, and it can ramp you as well. So, like, for instance, if you go Otherworldly Gaze, and you put 4 cards in your graveyard, you're almost there already. It's turn 2, and all you need is, how many, what is it, I think 7? Yeah, if you have 7 or more, you can flip it. And then it's great late game for finding removal and counter magic. This counters commanders. This kills everything but commanders. Infernal Grasp, just good cheap removal. Lots of cheap removal in this deck. Same deal, cheap removal. Ramp. Ramp is very important. They don't have great options for blue and black right now in Historic for ramp. So we got Arcane Signet, Mind Stone, Ornithopter, 3 ramp cards. There's more later, just higher CMC. Cancel, counter spell. Cemetery Eliminator is nice. You can, if he stays out long enough, you can basically cast everything off the top of your library. I really like him, and he's graveyard hate for your opponent too, which is nice in a lot of matchups. Dissipate, great counterspell. Narset is great. This is one of those cards that actually help you in the control matchup. If she stays around and your opponent's trying to get card advantage, it's just not going to happen. So there's Sabotage, counter, card advantage in a way. Thought Collapse, This is like cancel. It sucks sometimes that you mill people because milling can help them a lot, but I wanted a lot of counter magic in this deck. Wizard's Retort, another counter spell. I love this card. Counter or draw, very nifty. It's either a board wipe for tokens or one big neg 5. This guy is very utility based. In the aggro matchups, sometimes you need to make a 1/1 pest to just chump block a guy or trade with a guy. And then against control matchups, you're always going to be drawing cards, losing life. And then, so it's graveyard hate for those, for when it matters. Destroy target creature without flying, just more cheap removal. You're killing a lot of stuff in this deck, and a lot of your stuff is dying in this deck. These slugs can become insane because you can sack one slug to draw 2 cards and lose 1 life if you have Midnight Reaper out on the field. Murder, it's very self-explanatory. Sedgemoor Witch, just to kind of help with the whole creating a massive board state. You have a lot of instants, you have a lot of sorceries in this deck. Soul Shatter, more removal. Removal, card draw, great Dimir card draw spell. I love Surveil in this deck. It goes well with Search for Azcanta. Chromatic Lantern, more ramp. This is ramp, and I love the fact you can venture into the dungeon. I know it's not always optimal, but there are times where you don't have anything to do, and you can use that as a mana sink. Coach's Insight, double dipping on a draw spell because of Jumpstart. I never roll higher than 9 on here. I've never really got to be able to do any of the other abilities, but it's just card draw. Baleful Mastery, good removal card. Gelatinous Cube, great removal. She's a whole mix of things. She can just very utility creature. More removal. I love removal on creatures. It can't get better than this. Settle the score. There is a few planeswalkers in this deck. Exiling a creature and putting 2 loyalty counters on a planeswalker is game changing sometimes. Restless Contempt, great removal spell. Hostage Taker, it's like a tempo removal spell. Because if they kill it, they're losing a card, but they're getting their guy back. And if you play it, then it's like all just straight value. Karn, more often than not, when we +1, our opponents will give us lands, and that's exactly what we want. If he stays around long enough, he can be really obnoxious. We have a lot of ramp artifacts in this deck, and so you can actually create sizable constructs eventually. Mind Flayer, it is a removal spell basically. It's kind of like Hostage Taker. They can kill it, but it's annoying. Lolth, Spider Queen. You kill a lot of stuff, and your stuff dies often. She's great for this deck. Enter the God Eternals. Can't really complain. Helps as Kanta, and you can deal damage and make a body. It just does everything. Dream Eater. There is no way to get rid of enchantments in this deck, so you're stuck with this, bouncing them and countering them. And it's just sometimes it's a great surprise, and you can get away with a lot of neat tricks. Karn's Temporal Sundering. Turn spells in this deck are very powerful because you get 2 Incepts, and that kills a lot of things. So yeah, that's one of our turn spells. Liliana Dreadhorde General. She's fantastic because most of your creatures you're going to be blocking with and getting rid of anyway, and she can just win the game by herself, honestly, if she's not dealt with. Another turn spell. Makes 2 birds, which I like. I like flying blockers, Syncopate, more counter magic. This is the special card. In addition to it being a board wipe, with this guy, it's a finisher. The other day, actually, on my stream, I did kill someone with it. So you just get a whole bunch of slugs out, and then you cast this, and if you're trying to just do the slug finisher with burn, it's only 3 mana. And so let's say I got 8 slugs out, cast this for 3, deal 8 damage to my opponent. It's a great finisher, and that's why it's in here. Mana base is very simple. I hate tap lands. I just don't ever really run them anymore. It's in my opinion better to have access to untapped mana at all times. if it's going to be a tap land, it's got to have to be like really, really powerful. And there's not many. There's nothing in Arena that's powerful enough to be considered a tap land for this deck. What I am gonna add that I don't have yet, I think, is the proliferate land. Hold on, let's find it. It is a rare. Is around here somewhere. Karn's Bastion. Yep, I'm gonna put that in here. It goes well with Planeswalkers. It goes well with neg-1 counters, but we just don't have a rare wild card yet. But yeah, thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoy this deck tech, and tell me if you like videos like this. I'll make more. Stay tuned for my next stream. Y'all have a good day. Take it easy.